Erev Tov, everyone. Erev Tov. It is. Welcome to the Maimon Beit Knesset. This is Monday night. It is 8 p.m. here on the east side of the United States and here in the diaspora. This is the Maimon Beit Knesset. Therefore, it must be Zeyde Story Corner. That's right. And we are back. Yep. Yeah, yes, you are. You thought you could get rid of me. Nobody thought we were going to get rid of you. I mean, it was basically we just kind of ran out of stories to read. There are always more stories. Yeah, I know that. I know that. And we got some really good ones. Yeah, this is good. Yeah. Yeah, we have a new book of stories. They are wonderful, wonderful stories. And good to be back and see everybody. Let's see who we have in the chat room. We have Donald, and we have Simcha, and Ron, Yehuda, and let's see, Adrian. Adrian Morgan is here, and Marshall, and more to come. Yep, more to come, more to come. So yeah, Adrian, good to see you. Very, very good, buddy. Miss your show a lot, a lot. Yes, yes. Oh, but we understand. And of course, we guys listen to them anytime we want to, the old shows. But anyway, so we are back again with all new stories, and again, we are getting a late start this year because of Richard is also here too, and so is Marilyn, and so we'll just catch up with them as they come in. But yeah, we're just late getting started this year. Of course, we had the high holidays and everything all through the month of September, and then other things came up. So we're finally back. Yes, we are finally back. Finally back. Okay, so anything you want to talk about? No, I wanted to tell stories. Okay, okay. So let's get you on your camera. This looks different. Yeah, it is. It's a different camera stand. It sits a little bit higher, so that people aren't looking at the bottom of your jaw so much, and that's a good thing. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, so let's get you on your camera here. Okay, there I am on my camera. Okay, yeah, that's better. That is much better. Okay, so here we go. So you might want to bring up the book. I am doing that as we speak. Okay, so there we go. We have the book up. Very good, very good. Okay, so let's see our first story tonight. It's not what I had in mind there. Are you finally set? Yes, I am finally set. I finally got everything where I want it. Good. I'm very happy to hear that. Can we proceed with the show now? Yes, we can proceed with the show now. Okay, everybody, the rabbi is done fiddling around with the computer and everything, so now we can get started. All right, all right. Should have planned this out ahead. Well, I thought I did, but that once you get into the broadcast, things don't work as you thought they might. You sure they're going to work now? Yes, I'm sure they're going to work now. So, okay. So let's, why don't we just go ahead with the story? Okay, let us go on with the stories. This is from a book by Isaac Bashevis Singer. And it is his first book of children's stories. I mean, we all know he's a singer from his other writings and stuff like that. This is the first time he's actually written some children's stories, and they are absolutely wonderful. I hope you will enjoy them. Okay. So let us go on. This is called. Now you remember what we were reading when we were on here the last time? Yes, we were reading the Silly World of Helm. That's right, we were. So we are going to start out with a story of Helm. Okay, this is called The Elders of Helm and Genendel's Key. So we begin. It was known that in the village of Helm was ruled by the head of the community council and the elders, all fools. The name of the head was Gronom Ox, and the elders were Dopi Lachish, Zendvel Nini, Treitel Fool, Sender Donkey, Schmendrek Numskol, and Fievel Thickwit. Gronom Ox was the oldest. He had a curly white beard and a high bulging forehead. Since Gronom had the large house, the elders usually met there. Now, everyone, and then Gronom's first wife, Genendel, brought them refreshments, tea, cakes, and gin. Gronom would have been a happy man, except for the fact that each time the elders left, Genendel would reproach him for speaking nonsense. In her opinion, her highly respected husband was a simpleton. Once, after such a quarrel, Gronom said to his wife, "What is the sense of nagging me after the elders have gone? In the future, whenever you hear me saying something silly, come into the room and let me know. I will immediately change the subject." "But how can I tell you you're talking nonsense in front of the elders? If they learn you're a fool, you'll lose your job as head of the council." "Well, if you're so clever, find a way," Gronom replied. Genendel thought a moment and suddenly exclaimed, "I have it!" Well, when you say something silly, I will come in and hand you the key to our strongbox. Then you'll know you've been talking like a fool." Gronom was so delighted with his wife's idea that he clapped his hands. "Near me, you two become clever." A few days later, the elders met in Gronom's house. The subject under discussion was the coming Pentecost, a holiday when a lot of sour cream is needed to eat with blintzes. That year, there was a scarcity of sour cream. It had been a dry spring, and the cows gave little milk. The elders pulled at their beards and rubbed their foreheads, signs that their brains were hard at work. But none of them could figure out how to get enough sour cream for the holiday. Suddenly, Gronim pounded on the table with his fist and called out, "I have it!" "What is it?" "Let us make a law that water is to be called sour cream, and sour cream is to be called water. Since there is plenty of water in the wells of Helm, each housewife will have a full barrel of sour cream." "That's a wonderful idea," cried Cinder Donkey. "A stroke of genius," shrieked Zneinvel Nini. "Only Gronomox could think of something so brilliant," Dope Lakish replied. Treitel Fool, Schmendrik Numskull, and Fievel Thickwit all agreed. Fievel Thickwit, the community scribe, took out pen and parchment and set down the new law. From that day on, water was to be called sour cream, and sour cream water. As usual, when they had finished the community business, the elders turned to more general subjects. Gronim said, "Last night I couldn't sleep a wink for thinking about why it is hot in the summertime. Finally, the answer came to me." "What is it?" the elders chorused. "Because all winter long the stoves are heated, and this stays in Helm and makes the summer hot." All the elders nodded their heads, expecting Dope Lakish, who asked, "Then why is it cold in the winter?" "It's clear why," replied Gronim. "Our stoves are not heated in the summer, so there is no heat left over for the winter." The elders were enthusiastic about Gronim's great knowledge. After such mental effort, they began to look toward the kitchen, expecting Gnendel to appear with the tea, cakes, and jam. Gnendel did not come in, but instead of a tray, Gnendel did come in, but instead of a tray, she carried a key, which she gave to her husband, saying, "Gronim, here is the key to the strong box." Today, of all days, Gronim was confident that his mouth had uttered only clever words, but there stood Gnendel with the key in her hand, a sure sign that he had spoken like a fool. He grew so angry that he turned to the elders and said, "Tell me, what foolishness have I spoke that my wife brings me the key to our strong box?" The elders were perplexed at the question, and Gronim explained his agreement with Gnendel, that she should give him the key when he talked like an idiot. "But today didn't I speak words of high wisdom? You be the judges." The elders were furious with Gnendel. Fievel Thickwit spoke out, "We are the elders of Helm, and we understand everything. No woman can tell us what is wise and what is silly." Then they discussed the matter and made a new law. Whenever Gnendel believed that her husband was talking like a fool, she was to come in and give the key to the elders. If they agreed, they would tell Gronim Ox to change the subject. If they did not agree, she was to bring out a double portion of tea, cakes, and jam, and 3 blintzes for every sage. Feivel Thickwit immediately recorded a new law on parchment and stamped it with the seal of Chelm, which was an ox with 6 horns. From that day on, Gronim could talk freely at the meetings, since Gnendel was very stingy. She did not want the elders of Helm to gorge themselves on her beloved blintzes. That Pentecost, there was no lack of sour cream in Helm, but some of the housewives complained that there was a lack of water. But this was an entirely new problem to be solved after the holidays. Gronim Ox became famous all over the world as the sage who, by passing a law, gave Helm a whole river and many wells full of sour cream. And there you have it. What you think of that, huh? Okay. I adjust myself a little. Okay. This next story is called The Tale of 3 Wishes. This is a wonderful story. Okay, so we begin. Frampo. This was the name of the town. It had all the things that a town should have: a synagogue, a study house, a poorhouse, a rabbi, a few hundred inhabitants. Each Thursday was market day in Frampo, when the peasants came from the hamlets to sell grain, potatoes, chickens, calves, honey, and to buy salt, kerosene, shoes, boots, and whatever else a peasant may need. There were in the Frampo 3 children who often played together. Shlomo, or Solomon, 7 years old, his sister Esther, 6 years old, and their friend Moshe, who was about Shlomo's age. Shlomo and Moshe went to the same cheder, and someone there told them that on Hoshana Rabbah, which was not that long ago, on Hoshana Rabbah, which is the last day of the Feast of Tabernacles, the sky opens late at night. Those who see it happen have a minute's time to make a wish, and whatever they wish will come true. Shlomo, Moshe, and Esther spoke of this often. Shlomo said that he would wish to be as wise and rich as King Solomon, his namesake. Moshe's wish was to be a learned in religion as the famous Rabbi Moshe Maimonides. Esther desired to be as beautiful as Queen Esther. After long discussion, the 3 children decided to wait until Hoshana Rabbah, to stay awake the whole night together, and, when the sky opened, to utter their wishes. Children must go to bed early, but the 3 stayed awake until their parents fell asleep. Then they sneaked out of the house and met in the synagogue yard to wait for the miraculous event. It was quite an adventure. The night was moonless and cool. The children had heard that demons lurk outside, ready to attack those who dare to go out on a dark night. There was also talk of corpses who, after midnight, pray in the synagogue and read from the Holy Scroll. If someone passed by the synagogue at such a late hour, he might be called up to the reading table. A most frightening event. But Shlomo and Moshe had put on fringed garments, and Esther had dressed in 2 aprons, one in the front and one in the back, all meant to ward off the evil powers. Just the same, the children were afraid. An owl was hooting. Esther had been told that bats flew around at night, and that if one of them got entangled in a girl's hair, she would die within the year. Esther had covered her hair tightly with a kerchief. An hour passed. 2 hours. 3. And still the sky did not open. The children became tired and even hungry. Suddenly, there was lightning and the sky opened. The children saw angels, seraphim, cherubim, fiery chariots, as well as the ladder which Yaakov saw in his dream, with winged angels going up and down, just as it is written in the Torah. It all happened so quickly that the children forgot their wishes. Esther spoke up first. "I'm hungry. I wish I had a blintz." At once, a blintz appeared before the children's eyes. When Shlomo saw that his sister had wasted her wish on such a petty thing as a blintz, he became enraged and cried out, "You silly girl, I wish you were a blintz yourself." In an instant, Esther became a blintz. Only her face looked out from the dough, pale and frightened. Moshe had loved Esther for as long as he could remember. When he saw his beloved Esther, he turned into a blintz. He fell into terrible despair. There was no time to lose. The minute was almost over, and he exclaimed, "I wish her to be as she was." And so it happened. Immediately, the sky closed again. When the children realized how foolishly they had squandered their wishes, they began to cry. The night had become pitch black, and they could not find their way back home. They seemed to be lost in some strange place. There were no mountains in Frampol. Still, the children were climbing up a mountain. They tried to walk down again, but their feet kept climbing by themselves. Then there appeared an old man with a white beard. In one hand he held a stick, in the other a lantern with a candle inside. His robe was girded with a white sash. A strong wind was blowing, but the candle did not flicker. The old man asked, "Where are you going, and why are you crying?" Shlomo told him the truth, how they had stayed awake all night and how they wasted their wishes. The old man shook his head. No good wish is ever wasted. Perhaps the demons confused us and made us forget our wishes, Moshe suggested. No demons have any power in the holy night of Hoshana Rabbah, the old man said. So why did the sky play a trick on us? Esther asked. Heaven does not play tricks, the old man answered. You were the ones who tried to play tricks on heaven. No one can become wise without experience. No one can become a scholar without studying. And as for you, little girl, you are pretty already. But beauty of the body must be paired with beauty of the soul. No young child can possess the love and devotion of a queen who was ready to sacrifice her life for her people. Because you three wished too much, you received nothing. What shall we do now? The children asked. Go home and try to deserve by effort what you wanted to get so easily. Who are you? The children asked. And the old man replied, On high, they call me the watcher in the night. As soon as he said these words, the children found themselves back in the synagogue yard. They were so weary that the moment they came home, they put their heads on their pillows and they fell asleep. They never told anybody about what had happened to them. It remained their secret. Years passed. Shlomo had become more and more eager for knowledge. He showed so much talent and studied so many books of history, trade, and finance that he became an advisor to the King of Poland. They called him the King without a crown, and King Solomon of Poland. He married the daughter of an important man and became famous for his wisdom and charity. Moshe had always been deeply interested in religion. He knew the Torah and the Talmud almost by heart. He wrote many religious books, and he became known as the Maimonides of our time. Esther grew up to not only be beautiful, but a learned and highly virtuous young lady. Many young men from rich houses sent matchmakers to her parents to ask her for her hand in marriage, but Esther loved only Moshe as he loved only her. When the old rabbi of Frempel died, Moshe was made the rabbi of the town. A rabbi must have a wife, and Rabbi Moshe married his Esther. All the people of Frempel attended the wedding. The bride's brother, Shlomo, came to his sister's wedding in a carriage drawn by 6 horses, with grooms riding in front and on the back of the carriage. There was music and dancing, and the young couple received many gifts. Late at night, the bridegroom was called to dance with the bride, and so were all the guests, the bride holding one end of the kerchief and her partner the other, according to the custom. When someone asked if everyone had danced with the bride, the wedding jester, the badchan, said, "Yes, except for the night watchman." As he uttered those words, an old man emerged from nowhere with a stick in one hand, a lantern in the other hand, his loins girded with a white sash. The bride, her brother, and the bridegroom recognized the old man, but they kept silent. He approached the bride, placed the lantern and the stick on a bench nearby, and began to dance with her, all the people staring in amazement and awe. No one had ever seen this old man before. The band stopped playing. It became so quiet that one could hear the sputtering of the candles and the chirping of the grasshoppers outside. Then the old man lifted up his lantern and gave it to Rabbi Moshe, saying, "Let this light show you the way in the Torah." He offered this stick to Shlomo with the words, "Let this stick protect you from your enemies." To Esther, who was holding the white sash, he said, "Let this sash bind you to your people and their needs forever." After saying these words, the old man vanished. In the years following, it happened quite often that the Jews came to ask Esther to intercede for them before the rulers of the land. She would fasten the white sash around her waist, and she never failed to help her people. Everyone called her Queen Esther. Whenever Rabbi Moshe had difficulties in understanding some fine point of the law, he opened the ark where the lantern stood with its eternal light, and things became clear to him. When Shlomo was in trouble, he would take hold of the stick, and his foes became powerless. All three lived to a ripe old age. Only before his death did Rabbi Moshe reveal to the people of Rampol what had happened that night of Hoshana Rabbah. The rabbi said, "For those who are willing to make an effort, great miracles and wonderful treasures are in store for them. The gates of heaven are always open." And that concludes the story. What did you think of that one? That was a good one. Yeah, it was. That was a very good one. See, the lights are playing tricks on us. Yeah, I think we didn't do enough moving around to keep it going. Yeah, I'll try to be a little more animated. Okay, you do that. Okay. So this one is a good one. This one called The Extinguished Light. I just see who else is. Richard Rattenberg has joined us. Rabbi Moshe of Tzavat is with us. And let's see, who else do we got? I think we've gotten everybody. Good to see you all. So, okay. We will go on with the next story called The Extinguished Light. It was the custom to light the Hanukkah candles at home rather than in the synagogue or study house. But this particular study house in Belgrade was an exception. Old Reb Beresh practically lived there. He prayed, studied the Mishnah, ate, and sometimes even slept on the bench near the stove. He was the oldest man in town. He admitted to being over 90, but some maintained that he was already past 100. He remembered the war between Russia and Hungary. On holidays, he used to visit Rabbi Hatzkale from Kuzmir and other ancient rabbis. That winter, it snowed in Belgrade almost every day. At night, the houses on Bridge Street were snowed under, and the people had to dig themselves out in the morning. Reb Beresh had his own copper Hanukkah lamp, which the beadle kept on the reading table with other holy objects. A ram's horn, a book of Esther written on a scroll, a braided Havdalah candle, a prayer shawl, and phylacteries, as well as a wine goblet and an incense holder. There was no moon on the first night of Hanukkah, but that night the lights from the stars made the snow sparkle as if it were full of diamonds. Reb Beresh placed his Hanukkah lamp at the window according to the law, poured oil into the container, put a wick into it, and made the customary bracha. Then he sat by the open clay stove. Even though most of the children stayed at home on Hanukkah evenings, a few boys came to the study house, especially to listen to Reb Beresh's stories. He was known as a storyteller. While he told stories, he roasted potatoes on the glowing coals. He was saying, "Nowadays, when snow falls and there is a frost, people call it winter. In comparison to the winters of my time, the winters of today are nothing." It sounds kind of like what you used to tell your kids. All right. Let's just stick with the story, okay? I'm just saying, that's all. Okay, uphill both ways in the foot of snow, right? Yeah, okay. So let's go on with the story. Okay, anyway. So, compared to the winters of my time, the winters of today are nothing. What are you looking at? Nothing. It used to be so cold that oak trees burst in the forest. The snow was up to the rooftops. Bevies of hungry wolves came into the village at night, and people shuddered in bed from their howling. The horses neighed in their stables and tried to break the doors open from fear. The dog barked like mad. Belgrade was still a tiny place then. There was a pasture where Bugno Street is today. The winter I'm going to tell you about was the worst of them all. The days were almost as dark as the night. The clouds were black as lead. A woman would come out of her kitchen then with the slop pail, and the water turned to ice before she could empty it. And right there, we are going to stop and we are going to take our customary break. We'll take a break and we will return in 6. So everybody stay tuned to find out what happens.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Delicious things to eat.
The popcorn can't be beat. The sparkling drinks are just dandy. The chocolate bars and the candy. So let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
It's intermission time, folks, so hurry, hurry, hurry. Step right over to our refreshment center for the most extravagant array of refreshment goodies ever assembled under one roof. Enjoy breathtaking, mouth-watering goodies, everything from a snack to a delicious full meal. At our refreshment center, you'll find a large variety of goodies to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, or your sweet tooth. So hurry, hurry, hurry. Visit our refreshment center now. The show starts in 5 minutes. The show starts in 4 minutes. The show starts in 3 minutes. The show starts in 2 minutes. show starts in 1 minute. And now, on with the show.
And we are back. So you don't like what's in the background, huh? It's got all the collectibles there. There's a lot of Bugs Bunny and Looney Tunes, and there's some model cars, and there's some other things up there. That's quite a collection up there. It goes all the way up to the ceiling. So anyway, we work on it. See if we can get something to look a little better in the background. Okay. Maybe by next week. We shall see. Okay. It's not a big room, you know that? Yeah, I know it's not a big room, with the bookcases and everything in here. Yeah, it kind of takes up the room kind of quickly. Yeah. So we work on it. Okay, we'll work on it. Okay, so let's get back to the stories, huh? Okay, so where were we? Okay, now. Hearing something that year, the men blessed the Hanukkah lights on the first night, as they did every year. But suddenly, a wind came from nowhere and extinguished them. It happened in every house at the same time. The lights were kindled a second time, but again, they were extinguished. In those times, there was an abundance of wood to help keep the houses warm. To keep the wind out, cracks in the windows were plugged up with cotton or straw. So, how could the wind get in? And why should it happen in every house at the same moment? Everyone was astonished. People went to the rabbi to ask his advice, and the rabbi's decision was to continue rekindling the lights. Some pious men kept lighting the candles until the rooster crowed. Solachachas Mara, eh? Yeah, I guess so. Okay. This happened on the first night of Hanukkah, as well as on the second night and on the night after. There were non-believers who contended that the whole thing was a natural occurrence, but most of the people believed that there was some mysterious power behind it all. But what was it? A demon? A mocker? An imp? And why just on Hanukkah? A fear came over the town. An old woman said it was an omen of war or an epidemic. Fathers and grandfathers were so disturbed that they forgot to give Hanukkah money to the children who couldn't play games with the dreidel. The women did not fry pancakes as they had in former years. It went on like this until the seventh night. Then, after everyone was asleep, the rabbi was sitting in his chamber studying the Talmud. Someone knocked on the door. It was the rabbi's custom to go to sleep early in the evening and to wake up after midnight to study. Usually his wife served him tea, but in the middle of the night, the rabbi poured water into the samovar himself, lit the coals, and prepared the tea. He would drink and study until daybreak. When the rabbi heard the knocking on the door, he got up and opened it. An old woman stood outside, and the rabbi invited her to come into the house. She sat down and told the rabbi that last year, before Hanukkah, her little granddaughter, Altale, an orphan, died. She had first gotten sick in the summer, and no doctor could help her. After the high holidays, when Altale realized that her end was near, she said, "Grandmother, I know that I am going to die, but I only wish to live until Hanukkah, when Grandpa gives me Hanukkah money and I can play dreidel with the girls." Everyone in Biragray prayed for the girl's recovery, but it so happened that she died just a day before Hanukkah. For a whole year after her death, her grandparents never saw her in their dreams. But this night, the grandmother had seen Altale in her dreams 3 times in a row. Altale came to her and said that because the people of the town had not prayed ardently enough for her to see the first Hanukkah candle, she had died angry, and it was she who extinguished the Hanukkah lights in every house. The old woman said that after the first dream, she awakened her husband and told him, but he said that because she brooded so much about her grandchild, she had this dream. The second time when Altale came to her in her dream, the grandmother asked Altale what the people of the town could do to bring peace to her soul. The girl began to answer, but the old woman woke up suddenly before she could understand what Altale was saying. Only in the third dream did the girl speak clearly, saying it was her wish that on the last night of Hanukkah, all the people of Birogray, together with the rabbi and the elders, should come to her grave and light the Hanukkah candles there. They should bring all the children with them, eat pancakes and play dreidel on the frozen snow. When the rabbi heard these words, he began to tremble. He said, "It's my fault. I didn't pray enough for the child." He told the old woman to wait, poured some tea for her, and looked in the books to see if what the girl asked was in accordance with the law. Though he couldn't find a similar case in all the volumes in his library, the rabbi decided on his own that the wish of the grieved spirit should be granted. He told the old woman that on a cold and windy night there is very little chance for lights to burn outdoors. However, if the ghost of the girl could extinguish all the lights indoors, she might also have the power to do the opposite. The rabbi promised the old woman to pray with all his heart for success. Early in the morning, when the beadle came to the rabbi, he asked him to take his wooden hammer and go from house to house, knock on the shutters, and tell the people what they must do. Even though Hanukkah is a holiday, the rabbi had ordered the older people to fast until noon and ask forgiveness of the girl's sacred soul, and also pray that there should be no wind in the evening. All day long a fierce wind blew. Chimneys were blown off of some roofs. The sky was overcast with dark clouds. Not only the unbelievers, but some of the God-fearing men doubted lights could stay lit in a storm like this. There were those who suspected that the old woman invented the dream, or that a demon came to her disguised as her late grandchild in order to scoff at the faithful and lead them astray. The town's healer Nisan, who trimmed his beard and came to the synagogue only on the Sabbath, called the old woman a liar and warned that the little ones might catch terrible colds at the graveyard and get inflammation of their lungs. The blizzard seemed to be coming wilder from minute to minute, but suddenly, while the people were reciting the evening prayer, a change took place. The sky cleared, the wind subsided, a warm breeze wafted from the surrounding fields and forest. It was already the beginning of the month of Tevet, and a new moon was seen surrounded with myriads of stars. Some of the unbelievers were so stunned they couldn't utter a word. Nisan the healer promised the rabbi that scissors would never touch his beard again, and that he will come to pray every day of the week. Not only older children, but even the young ones were taken to the graveyard. Lights were kindled, blessings were recited. The women served the pancakes with jam that they had prepared. The children played dreidel on the frozen snow, which was as smooth as ice. A golden light shone over the little girl's grave, a sign that her soul enjoyed the Hanukkah celebration. Never before or after did the graveyard seem so festive as on the 8th night of Hanukkah. All the unbelievers did penance. Even the Gentiles heard of the miracle and acknowledged that God had not forsaken the Jews. The next day, Mendel the scribe wrote down the whole event in the parchment community book. But the book was burned years later in the time of the first fire. When did this happen? One of the children asked. Reb Berish clutched his beard with his had once been red, then turned white, and finally became yellowish from the snuff he used. He pondered for a while and said, "Not less than 80 years ago. And you remember it so clearly?" "As if it took place yesterday." The light in Reb Beresh's Hanukkah lamp began to sputter and smoke. The study house became full of shadows. With his bare fingers, the old man pulled out 3 potatoes out of the stove, broke off some pieces, and offered them to the children. He said, "The body dies, but the soul goes up to God and lives forever." "What do the souls do when they are with God?" one of the boys asked. "They sit in paradise on golden chairs with crowns on their head, and God teaches them secrets of the Torah." "God is a teacher?" "Yes, God is a teacher, and all good souls are his pupils," Reb Beresh replied. "How long will the souls go on learning?" a boy asked. "Until the Moshiach comes, and then there will be a resurrection of the dead," Reb Beresh said. "But even then, God will continue to teach his eternal yeshiva, because the secrets of the Torah are deeper than the ocean, higher than the heaven, and more delightful than all the pleasures the body could ever enjoy." So what you think of that one, huh? Okay, so I don't know if we'll get this one finished. We may have to do a cliffhanger and finish it next week, but we will go ahead and try. We will see. Probably get it done. This is the story of Mazel and Shlemazel, or the milk of the lioness. The milk of the lioness? That's obscene. No, it's not. Just read the story. I read the story. Okay, I'm going to take a little issue with that, but anyway, we will read the story anyway. Okay. In a faraway land, on a sunny spring day, the sky was blue as the sea, and the sea was as blue as the sky, and the earth was as green as in love with them both. 2 spirits were passing through a village. One was called Mazal, which means good luck, and the other Shlemazel, bad luck. The spirits are not seen by man, but they can see one another. Mazel was young, tall, slim. His cheeks were pink, and he had sand-colored hair. He was dressed in a green jacket, red riding breeches, and wore a hat with a feather in it. There were silver spurs on his high boots. Mazel seldom walked. Usually he rode his horse, which was also a spirit. On this particular day, he felt like strolling through the village on foot. Shlemazel limped along beside him with the help of a knotty wood cane. An old man with a wan face and angry eyes under his bushy brows. His nose was crooked and red from drinking. His beard was gray as spider webs. He was attired in a long black coat, and on his head sat a peaked hat. Mazel spoke to Shlemazel. Listen. Mazel was in a boasting mood. Everyone wants me. Everybody loves me, he said. Wherever I go, I bring joy. Naturally, the people cannot see me because I am a spirit, but they all long for me just the same. Merchants and sailors, doctors and shoemakers, lovers and card players. All over the world they call muzzle, come to me. Nobody ever calls you Schlemazel. You'll have to admit that what I say is true. Schlemazel pursed his lips and clutched his beard. Yes, I must agree that you are a charmer, he said. But the world is ruled by the strong and not by the charming. What can take you a year to accomplish, I can destroy in 1 second. Schlemazel had made a point, and now Mazel bit his lip in annoyance. We all know you can destroy, he replied, but you always do it in the same way. Either you kill, or you burn, or you send sickness or famine, war or poverty. I, on the other hand, am always full of fresh ideas. I know millions of ways to make people happy. I have billions of ways of making them unhappy. That's not true. You always use the same old tricks, Mazel insisted. I'll bet you can't even find a single way of spoiling something nice that I've done. Is that so? What will you wager? Shemazel countered. If you win, Mazel said, I will give you a barrel of the precious wine of forgetfulness. If you lose, you keep your red nose out of my business for 50 years. Agreed, Schlemazel replied. Well, what will you do that's so nice? I will go to the poorest hut in the village and bring happiness to whoever lives there. I will remain with that person for an entire year. The moment the year is at an end, you may take over, but only on condition that you will neither kill him through a mishap, nor make him sick, nor impoverish him. And on no account are you to use any of your old tired games. Now, how much time will you need to undo what I have done? 1 second, Schlemazel replied. It's a bet. Mazel stretched out his hand. The green gem of hope sparkled from a ring on his third finger. He grasped Schlemazel's gaunt and wrinkled hand, which had crooked fingers with horny nails. The day was warm, but Schlemazel's hand was cold as ice. Soon after they parted, Mazel came to a hut which he knew must be the poorest in the village. The logs from which it had been built were rotten and covered with moss. Its thatched roof had turned black with time. There was no chimney, and the smoke from the stove escaped through a hole in the roof. The glass panes had long since disappeared from the windows, which were boarded over. Mazel had to bend his head to get through the door. Inside, toadstools sprouted from the unplastered walls. On a broken-down cot which was covered with straw, sat a young peasant lad. He was barefoot and half naked. Mazel asked his name. "Tom," he replied. "Why are you so down?" Mazel inquired. Tom could not see Mazel, but nevertheless he spoke to him, thinking he was talking to himself. Tom said, "I once had parents, but they were unlucky. My father died of consumption. My mother went to the forest to gather mushrooms and was bitten by a poisonous snake. The small piece of land they left me is so full of rocks that I can hardly farm it. And last year there was a drought and a locust plague. This year I won't even have a harvest because I had nothing to sow." "Still, one shouldn't lose hope," Mazel said. "What can I hope for?" Tom asked. "If you don't sow, you don't reap. My clothes are in tatters, and the girls of the village laugh at me. A man without luck is worse than dead." "Something good may still happen," suggested Mazel. "When?" "Soon." "How?" Before Mazel could reply, there was the sound of trumpets and galloping hooves. 24 royal guards on horseback preceded the king's carriage drawn by 6 white stallions. The horsemen were uniformed in red pantaloons, yellow tunics, and plumed white helmets. A company of courtiers also mounted following the carriage. All the village had come out to admire the royal travelers. Whoever was wearing a hat removed it. Some of the villagers kneeled. The girls curtsied. At first it looked as if the carriage would pass through the village without stopping, and the people would hardly be able to catch a glimpse of their king. But Mazel had already figured things out. As the carriage reached Tom's hut, one of its wheels rolled off, and the vehicle almost turned over. The riders reined in their horses, and the entire company came to a standstill. The door of the carriage opened, and the king came out, followed by the 17-year-old crown princess Nisika, his only child. Nisika was famous for her beauty both at home and abroad. The royal party was returning from a ball given in the honor of the king of the neighboring land. The princess's golden hair fell to her shoulders. Her eyes were blue, her skin white, her neck long, and her waist narrow. She was gowned in a white dress reaching to the tips of her slippers. The king had always spoiled her because her mother had died when Nisika was small. But today he was angry with his lovely daughter. The purpose of the ball had been to introduce Nisika to Crown Prince Tepish, and a match was to be arranged with them. However, Nisika did not like the prince, and he was the 7th prince in a row she had rejected. Of the first, she said he laughed too loud and too often. The second spoke of nothing but his skill at hunting foxes. She had seen the third beating his dog. The fourth had the most irritating habit of beginning each sentence with I. The fifth had been a practical joker. The sixth had the habit of telling the same stories over and over again. What are you looking at? Nothing. As for Tepesh, Nesika simply announced that she would not have him because his boots were foolish. How can boots be foolish? Her father asked. If the feet are foolish, the boots are foolish, Nesika replied. How can feet be foolish? Her father insisted. If the head is foolish, the feet are foolish, Nesika retorted. Each time Nesika had found a reason not to be married, the king was beginning to be afraid she would turn into an old maid. According to the law of the land, Nesika could become queen on her father's death only if she had a husband to help her rule. If she failed to marry, the prime minister, whose name was Kamstan, would ascend the throne in her place. Kamstan was well known for being an intriguer, a coward, and a miser. He was so extremely stingy that for their golden wedding anniversary, when it is customary to present an object of gold, he gave his beloved wife a tin thimble wrapped in gold paper. When the wheel fell off of the carriage, the already angry king flew into a rage. He rebuked his attendants for endangering his life and demanded to know which one of them could set the wheel back in place the fastest. Tom knew little about fixing a wheel and nothing about fancy carriages. But since Mazel stood behind him, he was filled with courage and called out, "I can do it, your majesty." The king looked with curiosity at this half-naked lad. After some hesitation and a nudge from Mazel, he said, "If you can do it, and quickly." The villagers who knew Tom as a ne'er-do-well and a bungler watched in fear. They were sure he would fail and that the king would vent his anger on the entire village. When Mazel stands behind a man, the man succeeds in everything, and so it was with Tom. As a young man, he had worked for a short time in a smithy, but he was sure that he remembered nothing of what he had learned there. However, no sooner had he picked up the wheel than everything came back to him. The king looked on in amazement at how deftly the young man worked. When the job was finished, the king asked Tom how it happened that such an able young man was going around in tatters and lived in a ruin. "Because I'm unlucky," Tom replied. "Luck sometimes changes very quickly," the king said. "Come along to the court, and we'll find something there for you to do." It all happened so suddenly that the villagers could not believe their eyes. The king simply opened the door of his carriage and told Tom to get in. Then he gave the command to drive on. Tom was in constant fear that the wheel would come off again, even though the horses galloped along at full speed. the wheel remained in place. The king and Nesecha questioned Tom about his life in the village. The lad replied in a humble manner, and his answers were brief and clever. Mazel was talking through him. The king turned to Nesecha and spoke in a foreign language which Tom didn't understand, but Mazel did. "See what bright young men there are among our peasants?" And Nesecha replied in the same language, "Many a prince could learn from him." After a while, she added thoughtfully, "He is handsome, too. All he needs are some decent clothes." Since Mazel had only a year's time to work in, things began to happen at once. That very day, as soon as they arrived at the palace, the king gave orders that a bath be prepared for Tom, and he be given fresh linen and new clothes. He was put to work in the royal smithy. Tom very soon began to show unusual skill. He could mend carriages that were considered beyond repair. He could shoe horses so wild that no one else dared go near them. He also turned out to be a great horseman. In less than a month, he was appointed master of the king's stables. Once each year, the royal races were held at court. Tom was permitted to take part and he managed almost immediately to enchant the courtiers, visiting dignitaries and the king's wise men, and, as a matter of fact, the entire country. Tom had chosen to ride an unknown horse, but with Mazel's help, it became the fleetest horse in the history of the land. With Tom as its rider, it easily cleared the broadest ditches, the highest fences, and won all the purses. He cut such an elegant figure that all the ladies of the court fell in love with him. Needless to say, Nesecha had been in love with him from the very start. As always with those who are deeply in love, Nesecha thought that her feelings for Tom were a secret. Actually, the entire court knew about it, even her father, the king. He also knew that lovers can be very stubborn. And since the proud king did not want to marry his daughter to the son of peasants, he decided to give Tom a task so challenging that he was bound to fail. He sent him with a small group of retainers into the depths of the kingdom to demand the allegiance of a wild and rebellious tribe that no lord of the king had been able to win over. With Mazel's help, Tom not only succeeded, but returned with magnificent gifts for the king and Princess Nesecha. Tom's fame continued to grow. Bards and minstrels sang of his deeds. High officials came to him for advice. He became the most admired and best loved man in the kingdom. When the humble achieve success, they often become haughty and forget those among whom they grew up. Tom always found time to help peasants and the poor. It is known that the greater a man becomes, the more powerful are his enemies. Prime Minister Constant, who wanted the throne, intrigued against Tom. He and his henchmen spread the word that Tom was a sorcerer. How else could a lowly peasant have managed to succeed where lords had failed? They said Tom had sold his soul to the devil. When that year, night after night, a strange comet with a long tail was seen in the sky, Tom's enemies insisted that it was an omen that Tom would bring misfortune on the king and lead the country to ruin. And that, my friend, is where we are going to stop for this evening. We will pick this up and find out what happens to Tom and what is Shlemazel going to do to him to ruin his life. We shall see. I hope you will be with us next week. Don't forget, Wednesday night is the Torah Study in Depth with Rabbi A. Friday night at 8 p.m. is the Kabbalat and Mariv Shabbat service, and Shabbat morning at 10 a.m. Shachrit and Musaf. Until then, everyone, Laila Tov.